Hi, my name is Frank Simonetti. I'm the motorsports manager for Eibach Springs. Eibach is a company that is 60 years old in 2011, and this year in 2012, Eibach will be commencing its 25th anniversary of business in the United States. Eibach's products are pretty unique. All of the Eibach racing springs are built here in the United States. The material does come from Europe. It's the highest quality, highest tensile strength material available in the world. But all of the processes are done in-house, and the Eibach spring is made in the USA. Eibach springs are a spring that they're guaranteed for life, which sets us apart a little bit from our competitors. All of the Eibach product being wound in the United States, we have a rating that states that all of our springs are built to be guaranteed within 2% of the advertised rate and 1% of the physical dimension. So any spring that you have that is built by Eibach, as long as you own the product, if it falls out of the length or out of the rating process, that spring is eligible to be returned to Eibach and given a new spring for as long as you own it. Eibach builds a lot of different products, and in the last few years we've listened to what the racing market has told us. And our new front springs that we build are basically done in a little different way. The most important thing about the new front springs that we build is they're out of the highest wire strength material that's available in the marketplace today, with the wire being somewhere in the 1,880 to over 2,080 Newton range for the wire strength itself. What it's allowed us to do is in this type of a spring is it's allowed us to give the spring wider gaps between the coils. The spring sets because of the winding in a much straighter configuration. And the other thing that's very important about the spring is that the spring stays linear. So as the spring is compressed through its travel, the spring goes straight up and down and not sideways, where we're not getting any shear forces in the spring or extra axial loads that push the spring outwards. This way the spring repeats. All of Eibach springs, when they're built, unlike our competitors, go to block in the manufacturing process. What that means is every spring is sent to coil bind. If you send every spring to coil bind, the spring remembers its height and it stays there. So we do not see any drop in height or loss in rate during the years of racing with the spring. The new Eibach front conventionals for our modifieds and stuff, again, very large gap spacing, very high tensile strength, and some of the largest travels in the industry. We also build our Eibach rear spring, which is the red spring being our conventional spring. And the reason I talk about the red spring is because we also build a Platinum series, which I will discuss. The red spring comes in a 16-inch length, 15-inch length, 13-inch length, and an 11-inch length, with the rate starting as low as 125 pounds going up. Again, all of the rear springs that we build that are double ground are a block resistant spring, meaning the spring can go to coil bind. Eibach, in our catalog, we list that the fact that all of our springs have the lowest block height in the industry. Obviously, better strength in wire, smaller diameter wire, bigger coil spacing, shorter block length, which gives the spring more travel, which is everyone is looking for. Eibach's Platinum Series spring was designed initially for the use in NASCAR at the Cup level, nationwide and truck level. This spring is made of the highest grade of material, which exceeds 2,080 newtons. The wire, again, is substantially smaller than what the regular conventional spring is. And this spring is a 1% spring, meaning that it is 1% guaranteed in height and in rate. This spring completely goes to block with the shortest block height in the industry. Every spring that you get from Eibach that is a Platinum spring comes with a Rarig dyno sheet in it that graphs the spring and shows the digressiveness nature of our springs. Digression is very important in the springs. You want the spring to go to a digressive nature because it allows the shock to be able to do its job. Two most important things on a race car, the spring and the shock. The shock's job is to control the spring. So if you can build a spring that stays in a digressive nature, it means that the shock can do what it's supposed to all the way down instead of fighting a progressive traveling spring that's increasing rate as the race car driver or the crew chief is trying to make the car stay down on the rebound on the car and keep the tire loaded. Another product that Eibach has is our barrel springs. And the barrel springs are springs that are 2.5-inch ID, 2.5-inch ID on each end, along with a 3-inch middle. Again, very high tensile strength wire, very small wire, big wire gaps in between the coils, and it gives us the most amount of travel of any barrel spring in the industry today. Again, it's wound where it shows of a digressive nature, and it has the highest travels of any of the springs in the industry. With all of these springs that Eibach builds, we had to come up with some accessories to help the racer to be able to fine-tune what he's doing, because today that's what we're looking for, is fine-tuning in the industry. Eibach has come up with a coil sleeve. The coil sleeve is a plastic, for lack of a better word, part that when this is placed on a coil, instead of like a spring rubber that adds rate to the spring, this does not affect the rate of the spring at all. All this physically does is it changes the amount of travel that the spring has. And you say, why is that important? It's important because on the Saturday night racer that has a car set up for Saturday night, as he's trying to make his car not frame drag at the beginning of the feature because he knows he needs a softer spring in it for later in the race, for every one of the coil sleeves that you put onto the spring, it allows you to change the height of the car by 100 thousandths at coil bind. The reason it's dragging the frame is because it's coil binding at the beginning of the race when there's still moisture in the track and the car stays hooked up. But as the traction loss goes away with the track going slick, the spring opens up and the coil bind's no longer an issue. So you can stack these, you can put multiples on a spring. We even have them in different thicknesses. And these will take 2,500 pounds of load at coil bind. Another product that we've come out with is our spring locator. On our Platinum Series spring, when we put them in the car, it's very important to keep the spring in a linear motion going up and down and not try to shear. When you use a Platinum spring, you'll need to use a coil locator that has a boss on it that fits the inside of the spring, and then you go ahead and it sits, the idea of this fits the spring pocket or the perch of the car. They come in 3-inch 750 ID and 3.5-inch ID, and they must be used on all the Platinum springs on each end. Another important product is the TRB, and that's a torsion release bearing. Again, going back with keeping a spring linear, not trying to put extra hysteresis into a spring, when you adjust your adjusting nut on a spring, you're trying to take that spring and turn it and twist it. By using a torsion release bearing with a flat shim washer, a bearing, and another flat shim washer, when you adjust the nut, you're no longer turning against the spring, you're actually turning against the bearing. Again, keeps the spring linear in the car, keeps it where you're not trying to put extra stress on the spring, and makes the spring stay in the rate and in the curve in which the spring was designed for. Very good part, not a lot of money, adds performance. Another part that's very important is the spring bag. Obviously, keeping the debris out of between the coils of the spring, keeping your bump stop clean, or even if you don't want your competitor to know what you're doing. The Eibach spring bags are washable. They come red in color. We have sizes for everything up to the 5-inch springs. They have wear bars on the inside so that the spring does not get caught in the coils, the active coils of the spring. And it also has vent holes in it to keep it free of trapping moisture. Good product that everybody should have, whether it's a late model or a modified. Keep your springs clean, keep the shocks clean, keep your bump stop clean without letting dirt get in it and change the rate. They come in a package with 2 per package. Another product that's used in the spring industry today on shocks is a bump stop. Eibach, due to the fact that we build a large amount of dampeners for the streetcar market, we have 35 different bump stops that we use in our catalog. The nice part about it is, on the canister that you get from Eibach with that in it, there's a Q code in the corner, and the Q code will allow you to read that with your smartphone, and it gives you the gale force dyno sheet of each bump stop. So now when you put your bump stop back in the canister, you can always go back and see what that one was rated at and see whether you need one that's stiffer or softer for your next adjustment on the car. Another item that's very critical in short track racing today, especially in the pavement market, is the locker spring. Eibach has come out with 2 different locker springs. One is the ELS 88 and one is the ELS 78. The 88 means it's an 88-pound spring. The 78 meaning it is a 78-pound spring, which is normally used in a quick change. The biggest difference is that a locker spring is also a tuning device for the car. When the locker spring is in a car properly, the car should react going into the corner and out of the corner and through the middle of the corner in a manner that is consistent. Eibach springs, tested time and time again, have found out that the car stays in a tight in, neutral, tight off entry into the corner, compared to some other springs being in a loose in, neutral in the middle, and a tight off, or vice versa. When the tests were done, time after time when we tested this against the other competitors, the spring stayed consistent, which allows the crew chief to know that he's adjusting for a car that the conditions he's adjusting for are not caused by the locker spring in the rear. A normal locker spring is good for somewhere around 1,000 racing miles. You'll see springs drop off as much as 12 and 13 pounds, which is quite excessive. The Eibach springs usually only drop about 1 pound after 1,000 miles with all of the different heat cycles that go through them. That's a little bit about Eibach and the new products that we have. And as we grow, we continually look to build new products, and we're very racer oriented. So thank you for listening to us about the Eibach product.